After the tragic death of Abel and the exile of Cain, the human story continued through another son of Adam and Eve, Seth. Genesis 4:25 tells us that God gave Seth to Adam and Eve as a replacement for Abel, symbolizing hope and restoration. Seth's descendants followed a path of faith and devotion to God. Genesis 4:26 tells us that it was during Seth's time that people began to call upon the name of the Lord. This suggests a return to worship and a relationship with the Creator that had been lost with Cain's rebellion. Enoch, a descendant of Seth, is introduced in Genesis 5 verses 21 to 24, and his brief narrative highlights his close relationship with God. We read that Enoch walked with God, a phrase used sparingly in Scripture to denote a deep personal fellowship with the Creator. Enoch's life was marked by faith, as mentioned in Hebrews 11 verses 5 to 6, where his faith is praised for pleasing God. This communion with God was so profound that Enoch did not experience death. Instead, he was taken by God, an event unique to only one other figure, Elijah. Enoch's life exemplifies a spiritual commitment and dedication that contrasts with most of humanity at that time. Through Enoch, the line of Seth reflects a faithful remnant that sought God, showing that even in a corrupted world individuals could pursue righteousness and remain close to God. Lamech, a descendant of Cain, represents a different legacy. He is introduced in Genesis 4 verses 19 to 24, where we learn that he was the first man recorded to take 2 wives, indicating a departure from God's design for monogamous marriage as introduced with Adam and Eve. Lamech's most defining moment, however, is his declaration to his wives, in which he boasts of killing a young man who wounded him. In this brief poem, Lamech declares that if Cain was avenged 7-fold, then he, Lamech, would be avenged 77-fold. Together, Enoch and Lamech reflect the diverging paths of early humanity. Enoch shows that even amid a fallen world it is possible to seek God and walk closely with Him. Lamech, on the other hand, reveals the descent into violence and self-glorification that characterizes life apart from God. Their stories continue to serve as reminders of the choices available to each person: to walk in fellowship with God or to follow a path of self-reliance and sin. But while Seth's line initially remained faithful, over time, the 2 genealogies began to mix. Genesis 6, verses 1 to 2, describes how the sons of God saw the beauty of the daughters of men and took them as wives. The term sons of God, as used in Scripture, refers to either men or good angels, but never to fallen angels. In this case, it refers to men from the godly lineage who were faithful to God. However, their decision to marry women from ungodly backgrounds led to widespread moral corruption, as the influence of those who had turned away from God began to permeate society. This blending of the godly and the ungodly lines resulted in a general moral decline. Instead of influencing the descendants of Cain to turn back to God, the Sethites themselves began to fall into wickedness. The distinction between the righteous and the wicked was blurred, and humanity as a whole became corrupt. Genesis 6:5 paints a grim picture. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. It was into a world on the brink of judgment when Noah was born, but he was described as a righteous man, blameless in his generation. He found favor in the eyes of the Lord, and through him, God would bring salvation to a remnant of humanity and the animal kingdom in the face of the coming flood of devastation. Applications. The story of Seth and his descendants highlights the powerful impact that a godly legacy can have. Seth's line, which pursued worship and a relationship with God, stands as a testimony to the importance of passing down faith through generations. This application challenges us to consider the type of legacy we are building for future generations. Are we laying a foundation of faith and devotion to God that our children and their descendants can follow? Enoch's life is an inspiring example of what it means to walk closely with God. His unique relationship with God was marked by faith and complete trust, leading to God taking him without experiencing death. This application encourages believers to prioritize a deep personal relationship with God, as it is possible to maintain closeness with Him even in a corrupt world. It emphasizes that faith is more than following religious practices. It is about an ongoing, intimate fellowship with the Creator. Lamech's story illustrates the departure from God's original design for marriage and the escalation of violence and pride. His choice to take 2 wives and his boastful attitude about murder reveal how far humanity can stray when it rejects God's principles. This serves as a warning that straying from God's ways can lead to destructive behavior and moral decay. It prompts reflection on whether our actions align with God's design and how our choices can influence those around us. The blending of the godly and ungodly lines and the subsequent moral decline show the dangers of compromising faith for worldly influences. This application is a call to maintain spiritual integrity and to be vigilant about the influences we allow into our lives and communities. The story urges us to be the positive influence that draws others toward God, rather than allowing ungodly influences to erode our faith. It underscores the importance of discernment in relationships and the choices we make. The rise of widespread corruption leading to God's judgment in the form of the flood reminds us that even in times of great wickedness, God provides a way of salvation for those who are righteous. Noah's story, as a descendant of Seth who found favor with God, demonstrates that God is faithful to preserve a remnant who seeks Him. This encourages us to persevere in righteousness and to find hope in God's promises, knowing that He sees those who remain faithful. It also reassures us that, even when society seems to be moving further from God, He is still at work and has a plan for those who follow Him.